Oh, why is this mountain walking? Ow! Why is this hose biting? Ouch! Why do I know what a hose is?
That's about what we would look like today if they weren't there.
So you try.
Wow.
Today you'll learn why studying new species can prevent disaster, which of modern animals you definitely haven't seen, and how Darwin accidentally changed the world. Let's go! This is no toy sperm whale. You're looking at a very real pocket shark. In 1979, people first came across this strange creature, and in 2010, they managed to find another one. But how did this happen in the first place? Why wasn't the pocket shark discovered along with all the other shark species? To make sense of it, we'd have to go back at least 10,000 years, which is when people began to learn more about animals and to think about what was going on around them. The first members of the human race also had ideas about animals because without that, no one could survive. When you're constantly at risk of being eaten by some ancient lion, it would have been nice to know what that lion looked like and what its habits were. So at that time, zoology was a matter of survival. But the more people learned about the world, the more mysteries they discovered. Imagine that for many years, you only know 5 species of animals. Let's say they're cows, goats, dogs, chickens, and cats.
And suddenly, near your ancient settlement, you discover
a giraffe. Needless to say, the reaction of many people was the same. And no, they weren't trying to describe the unknown creature. Why, if you can just call it a mythical monster? Also, make up a fairy tale or two and be frightened. And this didn't just happen in ancient times. In the mid-18th century, in northern France, there was a mysterious beast of Gouvernail. According to some reports, in 3 years, it attacked 250 people and killed 119. It was thought to be an infernal monster, a wolf the size of a horse with an elongated snout and a lion's tail. No one knew what this creature really was. Today, it's believed that it might have been a hybrid of a wolf and a dog, a hyena, or even a jaguar. All of these animals were unusual for France at the time and thus had every chance of becoming a myth. Well, this happened even to the platypus. When Europeans first encountered this animal in 1798, they thought that they saw some kind of prop. Some scientists thought that some Asian taxidermists might have created the strange creature. They thought that someone had sewn a duck's beak onto the body of a beaver-like animal. Scientists have even tried to look for stitches. Some must have been thinking, "Ha! What fools! Couldn't believe the platypus was real." But what do you say to that? Yes, you're looking at a Brunner Potter pigeon, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. Now do you understand how those scientists felt when they first saw the platypus? But the Brunner powder appeared through years of breeding. It's much easier to study such animals because people themselves control their characteristics. Wildlife is another matter. Have you heard of Darwin? Of course you have. Everyone knows Darwin, the famous scientist, author of the theory of evolution, who researched and described many species of animals. But few are aware that the very events of his life that changed the course of history happened by accident. In 1831, Darwin sailed around the world as a naturalist on the HMS Beagle. According to one version, he got on board because another, more mature and experienced scientist declined the long voyage. The voyage was supposed to last 2 years. What he didn't know was that it ended up lasting 5 years. According to another version, there was no other candidate for the expedition, and if Darwin hadn't been on that ship, everything would have turned out differently. Without that same 5-year circumnavigation of the globe, today we might not have seen a pocket shark. Think about it. 5 years to revolutionize science. The difficulty, though, isn't just in the timing. Searching for new species is a long and often very dangerous task. Look at this turtle, for example. It looks pretty ordinary except for this spot on its snout and is found only in Australia. This species of turtle was discovered in 1990, and the discovery was made by Steve Irwin and his father. It was hard to find a man more passionate about animals than Steve. He fearlessly went everywhere he absolutely shouldn't go and protected even those creatures from which he himself needed protection.
You alright? Did you fall out of the tree? Oh gosh.
Steve had spent so much time in the wild that his discovery was quite natural. Alas, the researcher was in constant danger and was on the verge of death so often that it eventually found him. Steve died filming animals.
That happens all the time.
Now imagine that someone managed to discover a previously unknown, unique creature. The discovery is a sensation, but the researcher accidentally dies in the process. That's a pity. Mankind today has invented new ways to observe nature and keep naturalists safe. One of the coolest is the creation of spy robots that look exactly like wild animals. Expensive toys equipped with cameras earn the trust with fine motor skills, like a robot in the form of a wild dog, for example. There's also a robot in the form of a baby crocodile, and a device in the form of a baby monkey that was not only accepted by the pack, but even mourned when the robot broke down. However, today the cameras may not take up much space. In the past, they had to be really giant to shoot in good quality. You had to sneak up close to the animals, and most of them usually don't like such close attention. Probably one of the cheapest and safest ways to observe and study wild animals is camera traps. You attach them to some tree, turn them on, well, that's all. There's nothing else to do. Usually, such devices have a motion sensor and start to shoot when there's an animal nearby. Just what you need to look for rare species. Apparently in 2017, it was with the help of a camera trap that scientists were able to prove the existence of the Japanese boar. And when you look at that boar, you realize that you look pretty decent in the picture. And sometimes poachers get caught on camera and make it easier to catch them. Camera traps in the forest are a bit like surveillance cameras in supermarkets. They make sure no one takes out, moose, for example. Another way to monitor it is directly from space. Tracking wildlife populations is very important to science because it helps take action and protect species from extinction. Looking from above is, of course, more convenient, but there are some problems. For example, the camera's resolution only allows you to see large animals. Look at this. These are about 15 pixels of a teenage elephant. It's a little confusing, but the scientists are trying very hard. They're willing to use every possible resource to monitor the animal world. They even use some Instagram photos. In 2019, scientists were able to accurately count the number of hyenas, lions, wild dogs, and leopards in a 63 square mile area in Botswana from tourist photos alone, and maybe give them a few likes. But okay, let's say people today have all sorts of different devices to help keep track of animals. But what if you live in the 18th or 19th century and you desperately need to explore the inhabitants of the seabed? Are you sure that's the only way to look at fish? What do you have in mind, Will? Aqualungs haven't been invented yet. In fact, such a device as a diving bell dates back to the 4th century BC. Even back then, people had learned how to go down to great depths and take air with them. But it wasn't really a good way to study marine animals. To hang out in one place and hope that some interesting fish will swim below? Well, that's why during the famous Challenger expedition, which lasted from 1872 to 1876, people acted in a different way. To be honest, it was rather primitive. They simply dragged a board with a metal net along the bottom and then picked up everything they managed to catch and studied it. Nevertheless, in this way, they have described more than 4,000 new species of marine life. That's really a lot. But just imagine how many more are lurking out there in the depths.
And this is what scientists should do.
Whoa. Why, in fact, do we need to study all these animals at all? It's been a long time since anyone tried to eat people. Well, here's a simple example. Locusts. In the past, locust plagues were a real nightmare, a tragedy, a natural disaster. But today, scientists know all about the reproduction of these insects, which means the locust population can be controlled. And if you have at least once seen a really large number of these insects, you understand it's for the best. Also, members of the animal kingdom can inspire or help solve problems with aerodynamics, because hardly anyone understands more about this than nature. It created birds. It'd be foolish not to borrow a few ideas for our own purposes, and every new species in the future could change our lives. It's just that no one has any idea how yet. For example, the worm that eats rocks. Wait, what? Yes, it does eat rocks. It makes holes in the limestone, and no one yet understands why. It seems that these worms have learned to extract nutrients from the least delicious object on Earth. Imagine what would happen if one day, with the help of worms, we, beat hunger. Anything could happen. Or in the future, the world would be turned upside down by an animal that, right this very second, is being watched by the most ordinary person a few miles away, or even yourself. More than 80% of the living organisms on our planet have yet to be discovered. It's quite possible that we've already encountered new, unknown animals, but just haven't realized it. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a giant chicken somewhere that we'd have to fight all the time.
You son of a...
I'm sure it'd win an Oscar among new species. Yeah, I didn't believe it myself. But it turns out that every year, the International Institute for Species Exploration compiles a list of the 10 most remarkable species described recently. The list includes species that stand out from the rest, have unexpected properties, live in secluded places, are the tiniest or the biggest. Well, you get the idea.
Top 10 most unusual new species.
Spoiler alert, most often they're bacteria, small insects, and some kind of fish. The scientists' tastes are very specific. See you later.